It is 2:14 in the morning, and a man is staring at his ceiling. Downstairs on the kitchen table, there is a bill he flipped face down so he would not have to see the number. On his phone, there is a hospital portal he has checked 3 times today. The results are still pending. And buried in his contacts, there is a name he has not called in years. A name he scrolls past quickly. The way you walk past a door you do not want to open. He wants to pray. He tries. But every prayer he starts dissolves into worry before it finds a second sentence. So he does what he has done since he was 8 years old. He reaches for the words that are already there. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. His lips move. His mind wanders. He finishes without noticing he finished. Here is what just happened in that dark bedroom. That man recited what may be the most repeated words in human history. And he did not hear one of them. He asked God for 7 things without knowing he asked for anything at all. 7 petitions, preserved in a deliberate order. And that order runs exactly backward from the order of that man's worries tonight. This is the story of those 7 requests. One at a time. The way they sounded when they were first spoken on a hillside in Galilee. Stay to the end. And tomorrow morning, when you say the words you have known your whole life, you will find you cannot say them the old way anymore. Think about where these words show up. They are spoken at weddings, right after the rings. They are spoken at gravesides. When the wind moves through the tent and nobody trusts their own voice. Football players huddle and mumble them before kickoff. Prisoners have scratched them into cell walls. Every night of the week. Somewhere in America, a circle of people in a church basement finishes a recovery meeting by holding hands and saying them together. Addicts and skeptics and believers, all carried along by the same 50 or so words. A grown American can forget his own mother's phone number. He does not forget, "Forgive us our trespasses." The prayer sits deeper than memory. It sits in the muscles. In a country with almost no shared texts left, this one paragraph survives. And that is exactly the problem. Because the price of knowing something by heart is that your heart stops listening to it. Say any word often enough, and it turns to smoke. Children discover this on long car rides. Repeat your own name 30 times, and it stops meaning you. The same thing happens to holy words. Quietly, over years, without anyone deciding it. The prayer becomes a runway, the mind taxis down while thinking about something else. You can land the whole thing. Take off to amen, and never once be on board. The man from 2:14 in the morning is not unusual. He is the rule. But slow the words down, and something strange comes into focus. There are 7 requests in this prayer. 7 petitions. The old teachers called them, and the sequence is odd. It does not open with food. Though food is in there, it does not open with protection. Though protection is in there, and forgiveness stands near the heart of it. It opens with something most of us have never once been desperate for at 2 in the morning. It opens with a name. Now hold your own praying next to that. Be honest about what actually comes first when you fold your hands. The bill comes first. The diagnosis comes first. The kid, the marriage, the deadline, the fear. We pray the way we bail water, grabbing whatever is nearest to the leak. Our needs come out in the order of our panic. Jesus taught a prayer that comes out in a different order entirely. So was that order an accident of style? Or was it the entire point? What if the most familiar prayer on earth is not just a list of things to say, but a quiet rearrangement of the person saying them? We are going to walk through all 7 petitions and find out what each one meant on the day they were first spoken. But we cannot start with the first petition yet, because before Jesus ever told his followers what to say when they pray, he stood on a hillside and told them what to stop doing. And the first habit he named is the exact thing we just watched a man do in the dark at 2:14 in the morning. Come to the hillside. It rises above the Sea of Galilee, green in the spring, sloped like a natural amphitheater down toward the water. A crowd is scattered across the grass. Fishermen who smell like their trade, farmers, mothers with children on their hips. Jesus is partway through the sermon that history will call the Sermon on the Mount, and he has arrived at the subject of prayer. He starts with 2 portraits. Neither one is flattering. The first is a man who prays on the street corner, at the hour of prayer, where the foot traffic is heaviest. His timing is perfect. His volume is generous. His eyes are closed, but somehow he always knows exactly who is watching. Jesus tells the crowd, "When you pray, do not be like him. He has his reward in full." And his reward is the audience. The prayer went out sideways, toward the spectators, and never went up at all. The second portrait cuts closer to our bedroom at 2:14. Jesus describes the pagans, who believe they will be heard because of their many words. They pile up phrases. They repeat and repeat, stacking language like firewood, on the theory that volume is leverage, that enough syllables will finally wake the gods up and wear them down. The Greek behind that phrase is worth 30 seconds of your life. The word is batalogeo, a word for babbling, for heaping up speech, prayer measured by the pound. It is so rare that scholars have almost nowhere else to look for it. And here is an irony large enough to make you wince. The short prayer Jesus is about to give. The prayer, designed as the alternative to mindless repetition, became the most mindlessly repeated set of words in human history. We took the cure and turned it into the disease. Then Jesus says the sentence that quietly dismantles most of what we assume prayer is for. Your Father knows what you need before you ask him. A sharp listener will immediately see the problem. If he already knows, why ask? Why bring him a list he has already read? The answer is hiding inside the question. If God does not need your prayer for information, then information was never the purpose of prayer. You are not briefing heaven. Something else is going on when you pray. Something aimed less at changing God's knowledge and more at changing you. This prayer works like a set of railroad switches. 7 petitions. 7 places where the track of your desire gets moved, degree by degree, until the train of your heart is running in a direction it would never have chosen on its own at 2 in the morning. That is why the order matters, and why this is not a magic formula where the syllables do the work. He tells us plainly that the syllables do not impress God. The arrangement is for us. Luke's Gospel adds one small scene that makes the whole thing more remarkable. One day Jesus was praying in a certain place, and when he finished, one of the disciples came to him with a request. Think about everything those men had watched him do. They had seen him quiet a storm from the stern of a boat. They had seen him feed a hillside of thousands with a boy's lunch. And there is no record that any of them ever said, "Teach us to do that." What they asked for was this: "Lord, teach us to pray." They had noticed where the power came from. They had watched him slip away before sunrise, again and again, to be alone with his Father. and they connected what happened in private to what happened in public. So they asked for the root, and he did not hand them a technique. He gave them about 50 words, short enough for a child, deep enough that 20 centuries of teachers have not touched the bottom. But before the first request ever leaves your mouth, the prayer makes you stop at the doorway. There is a 3-part address at the threshold, and most of us rush past it on the way to what we want. If you actually stop and hear it, those few words already change everything that follows. Let us be precise about something, because the title of this story promised you 7 petitions, and we are about to be honest about where they start. Our Father in heaven is not the first petition. Nothing is being asked yet. It is the doorway, the threshold you cross before the asking begins. And like most doorways, we hurry through it without looking, because the interesting stuff is supposed to be inside. But stand still on this threshold for a minute. There are 3 parts to this address, and each one is carrying more weight than we ever let it carry. Start with the word almost nobody notices. Our. Here is an experiment you can run tonight. Read the entire Lord's Prayer, slowly, and count how many times it says the word my. Count the times it says me. Count the times it says I. The answer is 0. 0. In the most personal prayer ever composed, it is our Father. Give us this day. Forgive us our debts. Lead us. Deliver us. From the first breath to the last. The prayer is built in the plural, and that is no accident of old-fashioned grammar. Jesus was handing this prayer to individuals, and he built it so that no individual could pray it alone. Think about our man at 2:14 in the morning. He is by himself in the dark. His wife is asleep. The house is silent. It is the most solitary moment a person has, and the words he reached for refuse to let him be solitary. The moment he says, "Our Father," he has smuggled other people into the room. Somewhere across town, an exhausted single mother is saying the same words over a crib. Somewhere across the world, a persecuted believer is saying them in a language he will never learn. The prayer quietly insists that all of them are standing at the same door, children of the same Father, and none of them gets a private entrance. You can pray this prayer in an empty room. The grammar will not let you pray it as an only child. Now the second word, and this one detonated on that hillside in ways we can barely feel anymore. Father. The Gospels preserve this prayer in Greek, but in the everyday language Jesus spoke, the language of Galilean homes and workshops, the word a child used for his father was Abba. It is the very word Mark records on Jesus' own lips in the Garden of Gethsemane, on the hardest night of his life. And you may have heard a preacher somewhere say that Abba means daddy, a toddler's babble, and that Jesus was teaching us baby talk. That popular version is not quite right, and the truth is actually better. Abba was not baby talk. It was the word a son used for his father at every age. A 5-year-old said it running to the door, and a 40-year-old said it across the table while they argued about the harvest. It is warm, it is close, and it is permanent. It is the word of a relationship you can never be fired from. Here is what would have made the crowd on that hillside go quiet. It was not the sweetness of the word. It was the nerve of it. Search the Old Testament, and you will find God described as a father to the nation. In a handful of beautiful passages, what you will almost never find is an ordinary Israelite opening a private prayer by calling the Almighty, "My Father." The way a child walks into a room and starts talking. There were titles for approaching God. layers of them, majestic and careful and at arm's length. And this rabbi from Nazareth looked at fishermen and field hands and said, "When you pray, start like this. Start with Father." He was not lowering God. He was raising them. He was handing peasants the access of sons. So the prayer begins with a relationship, and never with a resume. You do not open with your qualifications. You do not open with an apology for last week, or a case for why you deserve the meeting. The first words out of your mouth assume the thing your fear keeps questioning. He is your Father. You are already in the family. Everything else in the prayer flows downhill from that. Then comes the third part, and it keeps the first two honest. In heaven, because closeness without power is just company. It is a friend holding your hand in the waiting room, precious and helpless. And power without closeness is just weather, enormous and indifferent. The prayer refuses to give you one without the other. Abba, near enough to be bothered at 2 in the morning. In heaven, high enough that bothering him is worth it. The tenderness is real, and the throne is real. At the same time, in the same person. That is the doorway, a family word, a plural word, and an address above the ceiling of your problems. And now the door opens, and the first actual petition steps through it. Here is your last chance to guess what it is. The first thing Jesus tells frightened, hungry, indebted human beings to ask for. It is not money. It is not health. It is not safety, or guidance, or the miracle you have been circling for years. The first petition is about a name, and the name is not yours. It is 6:40 in the morning, and a man is standing at his bathroom mirror, having an argument with someone who is not there. You know this ritual, toothbrush in hand, water running, and in his head he is drafting the conversation that is coming today, the meeting where he was blamed for something that was not entirely his fault. He is rehearsing his lines, sharpening them. He tries a sentence, edits it, tries it again with more edge. In the shower, he delivers an entire closing argument to the shampoo bottles. By the time he picks out a shirt, he has won the argument 4 times. Look at what he is actually doing. Underneath the steam and the toothpaste, he is defending a name. His name, his reputation walked into that mirror with him. And every rehearsed comeback is a soldier assigned to protect it. Nobody taught him this. Nobody has to teach any of us this. Guarding our own name is the factory setting of the human heart, and it switches on before breakfast. Now hold that man next to the first petition, because the collision is the whole lesson. Hallowed be your name. The first request in the entire prayer is about a name, and the name is not ours. Before bread, before forgiveness, before rescue, Jesus teaches us to spend our opening breath on the reputation of God. But first, we have to fix something, because for most Americans, this line does not even register as a request. Hallowed be thy name sounds like ceremony. It sounds like the organ warming up, a fancy way of saying hello before the real prayer starts. We say it the way we say fine when a stranger asks how we are. It is furniture. It is not furniture. It is a petition. The first, and, by its placement, the most urgent one. Hallowed be your name is asking God to do something. It means, cause your name to be treated as holy. Make your name known for what it actually is. In a world that shrugs at you, ignores you, and drags your reputation through every gutter. Act so that people see you truly. It is a request for something to change out there in the world. To feel the size of that request, you have to know what a name meant to the people who first prayed this. In Hebrew thinking, a name was never just a label for telling one person from another. Your name was your whole self out in public, your character, walking around without your body. When Scripture says the name of the Lord is a strong tower, it does not mean the letters are sturdy. It means everything God is. His track record, his heart, his weight in the world is a fortress you can run into. So when the prophet Ezekiel delivers one of the saddest lines in the Old Testament, listen to what God is grieving. My holy name, he says, was profaned among the nations. And then comes the knife. It was profaned by you. My own people, wherever you went. Read that carefully. The nations were not getting their information about God from the sky. They were getting it from watching his people. And his people were ruining his reputation just by the way they lived. Now the first petition snaps into focus, and it turns out to have an edge pointed straight back at the person praying it. Because you carry the name too. If you call yourself a Christian, you have laced God's reputation into your own. Every room you walk into, his name walks in, stitched to your jacket. The way you talk to the waitress who got the order wrong, the way you argue online at 11 at night, the way you treat the co-worker who threw you under the bus. People who will never open a Bible are reading you. And whatever they read, they file under his name, which means, hallowed be your name, is one of the most dangerous things you can say out loud in the morning. You are asking God to make his name look right in the world, and you are volunteering to be one of the places where it shows. Go back to the mirror at 6:40. The man is still in there, rehearsing, guarding the little kingdom of his own reputation. Then, somewhere between the toothbrush and the shirt, the first petition surfaces from wherever he buried it in childhood. And for once, he actually hears it. Hallowed be your name. And the question in the bathroom quietly changes shape. All morning it has been. How do I win this? How do I come out of that meeting with my name intact? Now, a different question is standing next to it. Uninvited. If I walk into that room carrying his name, what does that conversation look like? Maybe he says the hard, true thing without the poison on the tip of it. Maybe he lets one cheap shot go unanswered. Not because he is a pushover, but because he is suddenly protecting a bigger name than his own. Nobody in the meeting will know a prayer did that. That is fine. Hallowing the name was never a performance for the room. It is just this. One ordinary person, in one ordinary conflict, deciding that God's reputation matters more than the argument in the shower. So the first petition rearranges your first instinct. You wake up ready to defend your name, and Jesus hands you his instead. That is petition 1. And petition 2 raises the stakes so high that, if you see it clearly, you will hesitate before you pray it. The first petition asked you to care about God's reputation. The second one asks you to welcome his government. And there is a decent chance you have been asking for it your whole life without ever checking what it would cost you if it actually showed up. It is 7:20 in the morning, and a man is sitting in his car in the driveway, scrolling the news before he pulls out. He knows he should not. He does it anyway. 90 seconds. That is all it takes. A war that will not end. An election that will not end either. Price is up again. A video of strangers screaming at each other in a parking lot, filmed sideways. Shared 4 million times. By the time he sets the phone in the cup holder, His jaw is tight, and his stomach has that low, static hum that has become the background noise of American life. 90 seconds. That is the going rate for your piece now. And somewhere under his breath, on the way out of the neighborhood, the old words come along for the ride. Your kingdom come. He has said that phrase thousands of times. This morning, for the first time in years, it occurs to him to wonder what he has been asking for. Start with what the phrase is not. It is not a request to escape. Generations of believers have quietly heard your kingdom come as something like, get me out of here, beam us up, let the credits roll on this broken world. But look at the direction of the verb. The prayer does not ask for us to be taken up and away. It asks for the kingdom to come down and in. Here, into this mess. This news cycle. This street. It is not an evacuation order. It is an invasion request. So what is the kingdom? Be careful, because this is where teachers start drawing charts. And the charts have divided good people for centuries. But one practical way to understand it, the way that fits everything Jesus did with the word, is almost embarrassingly simple. The kingdom of God is wherever what God wants actually gets done. It has no flag and no capital. It is a condition, the way health is a condition. Wherever the king's will is welcomed, there the king is reigning. And there his kingdom has, in that square foot, already come, which explains the strangest thing about how Jesus talked about it. His enemies kept waiting for him to announce a revolution. And instead, he kept telling farm stories. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, the smallest seed in the garden, that grows into a tree the birds nest in. The kingdom is like yeast that a woman kneads into 50 pounds of flour, invisible by lunchtime, unstoppable by dinner. Hear what those pictures have in common. Nothing about them makes the evening news. Seeds and yeast do not trend. The kingdom, in Jesus' telling, arrives quiet, small, underground, and then one day you look up and it has changed everything it touched. Now, put the man back in his car, because his commute is about to preach the rest of this chapter. 8 minutes from his house, there is an intersection with a long red light. And at that light, there is a man who is always there. Cardboard sign, military jacket, gone grey. A face weathered down to the essentials. Our driver has stopped at this light most workdays for over a year. He has developed, without ever deciding to, the skill everyone develops. The eyes that do not quite land, the sudden deep interest in the radio. He has looked at this man several hundred times and has never once seen him. This morning the light is red again, and those 4 words are still loose in the car. Your kingdom come. The thought arrives before he can defend himself against it. You just asked for the kingdom to come, and the kingdom is standing at your window. Because whatever else the reign of God means, Jesus was relentless about where to look for it. He announced his own ministry by saying the Spirit had anointed him to bring good news to the poor. He said the King will one day sort humanity by asking what we did for the hungry and the stranger. If the kingdom is wherever the King's will gets done, then a forgotten man on a median strip is not an interruption to the prayer. He is the exam. Understand, this is not a guilt trip about a $20 bill. Maybe the driver rolls the window down today. Maybe he buys the man breakfast. Maybe he finally learns his name. The details are his to work out. The point is bigger and sharper than one intersection. Your kingdom come is a dangerous thing to say with your eyes closed. because God may answer it by opening them. And the first thing you see will be your own routine, your own commute, your own carefully averted gaze, standing directly in the path of the thing you requested. And that is where this petition turns and looks at all of us. Because here is the honest question underneath it. Do we actually want the kingdom to come? All the way. We want the version that fixes the news. Yes, we want the wars ended, and the diseases cured, and the liars exposed. As long as they are the liars on the other channel. But his kingdom does not come in halves. When his will gets done in a life, it starts rearranging things we had plans for. The grudge we were saving. The ambition we built the calendar around. The comfortable distance between our lane and the man with the sign. Every believer is, in the quiet of his own chest, a small, sovereign nation. And this petition is a standing invitation for that nation to be annexed. So the prayer catches us again. We came to God asking him to bless our kingdom, our plans, our year. And this petition flips the entire request. It teaches us to say, your kingdom first, and let mine find its place inside yours. Petition 1 took the name we defend and swapped it for his. Petition 2 takes the kingdom we are building and lays it at the feet of his. Which brings us to the edge of the third petition. And it is only fair to warn you before we cross. The first two petitions cost you your reputation and your ambition, but they still let you keep a certain distance. The third one reaches for the thing we grip harder than anything else on earth. The steering wheel itself. And the only reason anyone can pray it honestly is that one Thursday night, in a garden of olive trees, the one who taught it had to pray it himself, face down in the dirt, and it nearly killed him before the cross ever did. There is a woman in a waiting room, and the magazine in her lap has been open to the same page for 40 minutes. Down the hall, behind a door she cannot see, a pathologist is looking at cells through a microscope, and what he writes down will divide her life into before and after, or it will hand her life back to her in a plain envelope. She has bargained with God all week. She has been brave and then not brave. This morning, she cannot even find the words, and the ones that float up on their own are the ones from childhood. Your will be done. And she stops, because for the first time in her life, she is afraid of that sentence. There is a man whose grown daughter used to sit beside him in church. And now her chair at Thanksgiving holds a coat. When he prays for her, which is nightly, he notices that he steers around your will, be done the way you steer around a pothole you know is there. What if his will involves a longer road back than the Father's heart can survive? Better not to sign that blank check. Better to keep negotiating. There is a man who has prayed for 11 years about the same thing. He could tell you the number of years without pausing. The way you can. 11 years of the same request. And the answer so far is silence. And every time the old prayer reaches, your will be done, something in him flinches, because he has started to suspect that God's will is the polite name for not getting it. And in a hospital portal somewhere, a set of results is still pending. And the man from 2:14 in the morning knows that waiting room chair better than he wants to. That is his chair too. Let us say out loud what church people rarely admit. Your will be done is the scariest line in the prayer. We do not rush past it because it is boring. We rush past it because it is terrifying. It feels like handing a signed blank contract across the table to someone whose plans you cannot read. And so, without ever announcing it, Many believers quietly treat this petition the way you treat the fine print on a rental agreement. Mumble it, initial it, hope it never gets enforced. Some of us learned that fear honestly. Somewhere along the way, "Your will be done" became the sentence people said at funerals, said over tragedies, said with a shrug at the bottom of the worst news, until it started to sound less like a prayer and more like surrender to a bulldozer. God's will got tangled up with everything that ever broke our hearts. And now we cannot ask for it without bracing. If that is what this petition means, no honest person could pray it. So let us go watch the one honest person who ever prayed it perfectly. On the one night when it cost the most. It is Thursday night, late, on a hillside of old olive trees just east of Jerusalem's walls. A grove called Gethsemane. The city is asleep below. Torchlight is already gathering in it, though the men in the garden do not know that yet. Jesus has brought his 3 closest friends, and he tells them something no one had ever heard him say. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow, to the point of death." Then he goes, "A stone's throw, Father." And he does not kneel serenely the way the paintings show. Mark's gospel says he fell to the ground. And listen, actually listen, to what he prays. Because this is the one who taught your will be done. And here is how he prays it under maximum load. "Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me." Stop right there. Do not smooth this over. The first thing out of his mouth is his honest want. He does not open with surrender. He opens with a request to be spared. Stated plainly, to the Father he knows can do anything. And he does not say it once and move on. Matthew tells us he returned to this prayer 3 separate times. The same anguished ask, while his sweat, the gospel record says, fell like drops of blood. 3 times. Whatever your will be done means, it cannot mean pretending you have no will of your own. The one who taught the petition put his own desire on the table first, in full, with tears, and then, only then, comes the turn. Yet, not what I will, but what you will. There is the whole geometry of the third petition. And it is nothing like the limp fatalism we feared. It is not, I want nothing. It is, here is everything I want, laid out honestly before you. And here, laid on top of it, is my trust that you are a father and not a bulldozer. Want it truly. Say it fully. Then hand over the verdict. That order, desire first, honesty second, trust last, is the order Jesus himself used, which means it is the order you are allowed to use. The woman in the waiting room does not have to pretend she is fine with any outcome. She gets to beg for the good envelope. Gethsemane gives her permission. She just does not have to carry the verdict alone anymore. One more thing must be said here, carefully, because lives have been wrecked on this rock. Your will be done does not mean that every tragedy on earth is God's direct desire. Hand delivered. The Bible will not let you say that. This is a world still in rebellion, still broken, still waiting for the kingdom we prayed for 1 petition ago. This request is for God's goodwill to be worked out through a world that contains things he hates. The way a master surgeon works through a wound he did not cause. When you pray it, you are not blessing the wound. You are asking for the surgeon's hands. And here is the strange gift waiting inside the scariest petition. The people who finally pray it, really pray it, report the same surprise. It does not feel like losing. It feels like putting something down. 11 years of white-knuckled managing, of drafting outcomes for God to approve, of doing his job for him at 2 in the morning, set down on the ground of somebody else's competence. Not what I will, but what you will turns out to be the door out of the smallest, most exhausting kingdom of all, the kingdom of my control. So the third petition finishes what the first two started. Your name, not mine. Your kingdom, not mine. Your will, not mine. 3 petitions, 3 surrenders. And heaven has taken up the entire first half of the prayer. And now something happens in this prayer that you have probably never noticed. Though you have crossed it 10,000 times, right here, at the exact center, the whole prayer pivots on a hinge. The word your has been carrying everything. And in the very next breath, the prayer turns, looks straight at the ground, straight at your kitchen table, straight at your unpaid bill, and starts talking about us. Lay the whole prayer out on the table, the way a watchmaker lays out a mechanism. Look at it as a shape. The first half runs on one word. Your, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done. 3 petitions in a row. And every one of them faces upward, away from the person praying. Reputation, reign, and will, all his. If the prayer stopped here, you could almost mistake it for the prayer of an angel. Some being with no stomach, no debts, no locked doors, nothing to fear in the dark. Then comes the turn. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For petition. And the word your disappears entirely. Now it is us. 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 Bread for us. Pardon for us. Protection for us. Rescue for us. The prayer that spent its first half in the heavens spends its entire second half at ground level. Down here, where the refrigerators and the regrets are, the hinge sits exactly in the middle, and it swings exactly one direction. Heaven first, earth second, but hear this clearly. Earth is not forgotten. Earth gets more petitions than heaven does. 4-3. That ratio should end a rumor that has haunted religious people forever. The suspicion that really spiritual prayer should rise above the grubby stuff, that mature believers should be embarrassed to bother God about groceries and gas money. Jesus apparently never got that memo. The prayer he taught assumes you have a body that gets hungry, a conscience that carries debts, a weakness that meets opportunities, and an enemy you cannot beat. He built 4 rooms in this prayer for exactly those things. You were never supposed to leave your actual life outside the door. You were only supposed to bring it in through the right sequence, because that is the discovery sitting in the hinge. The prayer does not delete your needs. It reorders them. Now, go back one more time to the bedroom at 2:14 in the morning, because we finally have the tool to understand what was happening in the dark. Remember the order of that man's worries. First, the bill on the kitchen table. The number he flipped face down. That is bread. Then the hospital portal, checked 3 times. The fear of what might be growing in the dark. That is, deliver us from evil. And underneath both of them, in the place he does not visit, a name in his contacts, a brother, and years of silence. That is, forgive us, as we forgive. bread, then rescue, then, someday, maybe, forgiveness. Now hold his list against the order Jesus taught. The petitions are the same. Every single worry that man carried is in this prayer. Honored, expected, given its own room. But the order is inverted, almost perfectly. Like a photograph and its negative, Jesus puts the Father's concerns first and the forgiveness near the center. Our panic puts the money first and the forgiveness last. Or never. And there it is. The answer to the question this whole story asked at the beginning. Why does the most famous prayer on earth start in such a strange place? Because we do not pray wrong things. We pray true things in backward order. We bail water in the order of our panic. Nearest leak first. This prayer takes the same water, the same boat, the same storm, and hands you the buckets in the order of wisdom instead. The content of your praying was never the problem. The sequence was, which raises the practical question the second half of this prayer exists to answer. When heaven finally hands the microphone to your needs, what does it tell you to ask for first? Bread, 1 day's worth. And the petition that asks for it contains a single word so strange that the world's greatest scholars have been arguing about it for 18 centuries. They have searched the entire surviving Greek language for another example of it, and they have come back empty-handed. It is almost as if the prayer needed to ask for something no human language had ever thought to name. It is 12:40 in the afternoon, and a man is eating lunch at his kitchen table with the lights off, because it is that kind of day. He is working from home, which today means fielding emails from a company that has started using words like restructuring and streamlined in the all-staff meetings. Everyone knows what those words are. They are the sound a company makes before it gets smaller. On the table in front of him, next to the sandwich, is the bill, the one from the opening of this story. Sometime this morning, without ceremony, he turned it face up. It did not improve with the light. The number is the number. On his laptop, a browser tab holds a grocery order. He has been editing like a hostage negotiator. Take out the name brand coffee. Put in the store brand. Remove the berries. Berries are a luxury now. He has done this math every week for months, and the math has started doing him back. He carries it into the shower, into the car, into the dark at 2:14 in the morning. If you asked him what he is afraid of, he would not say hunger. Nobody he knows says hunger. He would say the future, next month, next quarter, the stack of invisible bills that have not even been printed yet, the ones his imagination prints for him nightly, a whole phantom economy of tomorrow's needs, and him standing under it alone. He is, by any survey you can find, the most typical American in the room. Ask this country what keeps it up at night, and money answers the door before fear of death does. We are the richest civilization in the history of the species, and we lie awake doing subtraction. Into that kitchen, into that exact anxiety. The fourth petition speaks, and what it says is so modest it is almost insulting. Give us this day our daily bread. Not a year of security. Not a margin so wide we never have to ask again. Bread. Today's. That is the entire request. And every word of it is aimed like a scalpel at the phantom economy in that man's head. Now, the promised strange word, because it is hiding right there in the middle of the sentence. And it is one of the great puzzles of the Bible. The word translated daily is, in Greek, Epiousios. And here is what makes scholars lean forward. As far as anyone has ever found, that word exists nowhere else. The ancient Greek language left us a vast paper trail. Philosophy, drama, history, medicine, love, letters, tax receipts, shopping lists scratched on broken pottery. Epiousios appears in this prayer, in Matthew and in Luke, and then the trail goes cold across the entire ancient world. Origen, one of the sharpest minds of the early church, a man who lived and breathed ancient Greek, studied the word in the 200s and concluded that the gospel writers appear to have coined it, made it up. Feel how strange that is. The most repeated prayer in human history has, at its center, a word that seems to have been manufactured because no existing word would do. It is as if Jesus reached for a way to describe the kind of provision he meant, and the entire Greek language came up empty. So the prayer minted its own currency. Scholars still argue over the fine print, but the most influential reading lands on something like this: bread for the coming day. The next sunrise's worth. Enough to get a human being from this morning to the next one. There was no word for that, because who would ever ask for that? Every sane person asks for more than that. Barns ask for more than that. And so the prayer had to invent a word for a request the human heart would never invent on its own. Enough for today, and an appointment to ask again tomorrow. If that arrangement sounds familiar, it is because Israel lived it for 40 years, and the story was sitting in every listener's memory on that hillside. Out in the wilderness of Sinai, a freed slave nation woke up every morning to find the ground covered with something thin and flaky, like frost, that could be gathered and baked. They called it manna, which is literally the Hebrew for, "What is it?" And the manna came with one operating instruction: gather what you need for today. Do not stockpile. Naturally, being human, some of them stockpiled. They looked at the free bread and saw a chance to get ahead of tomorrow, to build a buffer, to retire early from trusting God. And the reserve bread, Exodus says, bred worms and stank by morning. Do not read that as God being petty. Read it as a design feature. The manna was not just feeding them, it was training them, one sunrise at a time, in a rhythm their slave hearts had never known. Provision as a daily relationship instead of a warehouse. The bread that could not be banked forced them to meet the giver every morning. 40 years of that, enough mornings to teach a nation, or at least to start. The fourth petition is manna grammar. It rations the request to the exact size of the day, because the day is the only unit of life you have ever actually been given. Yesterday is a receipt. Tomorrow is a rumor. You have never lived a next month. Every crisis you have ever survived, you survived in a today. With that day's strength, that day's bread, the petition simply asks for life in the only denomination life comes in. And notice, one more time, the little word standing guard at the front. Give us, even here, even at the level of groceries. The prayer will not let a man shop only for himself. The hand that asks for bread is holding other hands. Somewhere in your town tonight, there is a family for whom this petition is not a spiritual metaphor about anxiety. It is dinner. Praying "give us" while they go without is the kind of contradiction this prayer was built to make uncomfortable. Let two things be perfectly clear before we leave the kitchen, because this petition has been abused in both directions. It does not say money is beneath prayer. Bread is the first thing the second half asks for. Your rent is not too small for God. And it does not say, to anyone in genuine hardship, that their empty table is a faith problem. The manna fell on the whole camp. Some of the people gathering it had strong faith, and some had almost none. And the bread came anyway, because the bread was about the character of the giver, not the performance of the gatherers. Back at the table, the man finishes the sandwich. The bill is still face up. The number is still the number. But watch what the petition has done to the arithmetic. He was trying to solve the phantom economy. Next month times, next quarter times, worst case. An equation with no bottom. The prayer hands him a smaller problem. Today, is there bread today? There is. There is lunch. And there is work. At least today, there is work. And there is this one, turning earth with enough in it for the next sunrise. Tomorrow's needs are real, but they are not his assignment this afternoon. They have a father and an appointment. And the appointment is tomorrow morning. That is the fourth petition. It does not shrink your needs. It shrinks the battlefield to a size where trust can actually win. 24 hours. But bread is the easy request. Bread you can ask for out loud in front of anybody. The next petition is the one we whisper. It deals with what is hiding in the man instead of what is missing from the table. And Jesus took it so seriously that after the whole prayer was finished and delivered, he circled back and added a warning to one petition. And only one. This one. Watch a man's thumbs for a minute. They are hovering over a phone, in the lamplight of a bedroom, drafting an apology text. It is a little after 9 at night. Down the hall the dishwasher is running, and the argument from dinner is still hanging in the house like smoke. Now, watch him work. Because this is a craftsman at his bench. The first draft says, I am sorry for what I said at dinner. That sits on the screen about 4 seconds. Delete. Too much daylight in it. Second draft. I am sorry if what I said came out wrong. Better. See the little trapdoor he just built. If. Now the offense is a matter of interpretation. A problem with her hearing rather than his mouth. But even that feels like it concedes territory. So his thumbs go back in. Third draft. I am sorry we got into it tonight. I hate when we fight. Read that masterpiece again. There is no I in the crime anymore. We got into it. The fight has become weather. Something that happened to both of them. A storm neither one ordered. In 3 drafts, he has moved himself from defendant to fellow victim. And he has done it with the skill of a man who has been editing this same document. In one form or another. His whole life. Nobody taught him to do this. Nobody teaches any of us. Watch a 4-year-old with chocolate on his face. Explain the missing cookies, and you will see the whole legal team already assembled. And it never really leaves the building. We grow up, and the crimes change, and the drafting gets better. We rarely deny what we did. That would be crude. We dilute it. We sand the edges off the verbs. We surround the thing with context until it disappears into its circumstances. Like a man wanted in one state, quietly moving to another. Into that bedroom comes the 5th petition. And it uses a word that ends the editing session. Forgive us our debts. Debts. Different church traditions say this line differently. And the differences are older than this country. Some say debts. Some say trespasses. Some simply say sins. And each English word is reaching for a different edge of the same offense. Trespass sees sin as a boundary crossed. Sin names it as an arrow missing the mark. But the word Matthew recorded is the money word, ophelimata, debts. And the money word does something the others cannot. A debt is objective. That is its terrible gift. You can argue about whether a comment was rude. You cannot argue with a ledger. The number is the number. Whether you feel bad about it or not, whether you remember signing or not, whether the lender brings it up or not. Debt does not require your agreement to exist. And unpaid debt has one more property everyone in America understands in their bones. It accrue. Leave it alone, and it does not sit still. It compounds, quietly, in the dark, while you sleep. That is exactly how unconfessed wrong behaves in a human life. The thing itself might have taken 10 seconds. A sentence at dinner. A signature. A silence when you should have spoken. Leave it unnamed and it starts charging interest. It shows up as the subject you steer around at family gatherings. The person you are strangely tired after seeing. The prayer life that stays shallow because going deep means passing the room where the thing is stored. Ask anyone who has carried one for a decade. The original debt was almost never the heavy part. The interest was, so what does the petition actually ask? 2 ditches run alongside this road, and Christians drive into both. The first ditch says, confession is groveling. Self-hatred as a spiritual discipline. Rehearsing your worthlessness until God is satisfied, you feel bad enough. That is not this prayer. Remember the doorway you walked through to get here. Our Father, you are not a beggar, renegotiating with a collections agency. You are a son at a table, and the Father you are talking to, the prayer already told us, knows what you need before you ask, which means, and this should take a weight off your chest, confession is never breaking news. You have never once told God something he did not know. The bill was already on his table. Face up, the whole time. The second ditch is the one from the bedroom. Confession as plea bargaining. Explaining until the debt looks smaller. Bringing context. Character witnesses. Comparisons to worse debtors. I am sorry but we got into it. That is the 4th draft. And the 4th draft is not confession either. Real confession is a simpler and harder act than either ditch. It is turning the bill face up and reading the number out loud. Agreeing with the ledger. I said that, and it was cruel. And I meant it to be. No if. No but. No whether. The old word for this, in the Bible's language, literally means to say the same thing. To stop telling a competing story about the event and finally say the same thing about it that God says. That is all. It is the shortest transaction in the spiritual life and the one we will do almost anything to avoid. Because for one unguarded moment, it requires standing in front of the actual number without our legal team. Here is what waits on the other side of that moment. The oldest promise in the family. If we confess our sins, John writes, he is faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us. Faithful and just. The account gets settled, and your apology never hit a required word count, because someone else already covered it. We will meet the mathematics of that in the next chapter. In a story about a debt so large it had its own gravity. But before we go there, one detail, and it may be the most quietly stunning detail in the whole Sermon on the Mount. Jesus finishes the prayer. All 7 petitions, delivered, complete. And then Matthew records something odd. Jesus keeps talking. He circles back. Out of everything he just taught, the name, the kingdom, the will, the bread, the rescue, he returns to exactly one petition to attach a warning. And it is this one: for if you forgive others their trespasses, he says, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. 7 petitions. 1 footnote. He read the room across 20 centuries and knew precisely which line we would try to cut in half, praying the first 4 words and quietly dropping the rest. Because the petition does not say, forgive us our debts, period. It says, forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors, as we forgive. 2 small words. And there is a man sitting on the edge of a bed right now, phone in hand, about to find out how much they weigh. His screen just lit up, and it is not the woman from dinner. It is a name he has not called in years. The phone buzzes once against the blanket, and the name on the screen is his brother's. For one absurd second, his heart does something complicated, because he thinks it is a call. It is not a call. It is the calendar, his phone, which knows everything about him except what matters, is reminding him that his brother's birthday is this week. The way it reminds him to change his air filter, a machine's memory doing the work his family stopped doing years ago. He does not put the phone down. That is the strange part. He sits there on the edge of the bed, looking at the name. You do not need the whole story. And honestly, the whole story would not help, because it would just sound like your version with the names changed. It was money. At the start, their father's estate, which was not large, which somehow made it worse. Then it was words, said in a funeral home parking lot of all places, 20 feet from the flowers. The kind of words that are efficient, that do, in 8 seconds, what years cannot undo. His brother said some. He said some back. And his were better, which he was proud of for about a day. Then came the silence. And the silence turned out to be the permanent part. 2 addresses 40 minutes apart. 2 families that used to share holidays. Somebody's kids growing up thinking this is normal. Both men telling anyone who asks that it is complicated, that they have just been busy. And both men knowing the truth, which is that neither one is busy. They are keeping books. That is the phrase for it. He has never said it out loud, but he knows. Somewhere inside him there is a ledger with his brother's name on it, and the entries are immaculate. What was said, word for word, what was taken, who apologized last, and how insufficiently. He can produce any line item on demand, and on bad nights. The ledger reads itself to him, unprompted, in the dark. Now look at what he is holding, and look at what he prayed at 2:14 this morning without hearing it. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors, as we forgive. Of all the words in this prayer, those 3 might be the ones that stop an honest reader cold. Every other petition asks God to do something. Hallow, come, be done, give, led, deliver. This is the only place in the entire prayer where the person praying makes a claim about their own behavior. And Jesus welds it directly onto the request for mercy, with that little word as sitting between them, like a hinge. Forgive me along the same lines, I am forgiving. Nobody who reads that slowly can stay comfortable. It sounds like a threat. Is heaven's mercy really priced according to mine? Jesus knew we would ask, so he told a story. And the story runs on two numbers. A king is settling accounts, and they bring him a servant who owes 10,000 talents. Do not let the old word slide past you. A talent was a unit of weight, roughly 20 years of a workingman's wages. 10,000 of them is 200,000 years of labor. The number is deliberately insane. It is more than the tax revenue of entire provinces in that era. Jesus is describing a black hole, a number chosen so that every listener on the hillside understood. This cannot be paid. Not by this man. Not by his children. Not by 1,000 generations of his children. And when the servant falls down and babbles the mathematics of panic, "Be patient with me, and I will pay back everything," which is a joke. The king does not laugh. The text says he was moved with compassion, cancelled the debt, all 200,000 years of it, and let him go. Let him go. The man walks out of the throne room owing nothing, weightless, the interest that had been compounding over his whole life, gone in one sentence from a king. And on his way out, in the corridor, he finds a fellow servant who owes him 100 denarii, about 3 months of wages. Real money. Understand, somebody genuinely owes this man something. The way somebody genuinely owes you something. The way a brother can genuinely owe a brother. And the forgiven man, still warm from the throne room, takes his debtor by the throat. The king's question, when he hears, is the whole gospel in one line. "I cancelled all that debt of yours because you begged me. Should you not have had mercy on your fellow servant, as I had on you?" There is that word again. As the story is not saying your forgiveness of others earns God's forgiveness of you, as if mercy were a wage. The order in the story is unmistakable. The king cancels first, astronomically, before the corridor, before the test. The story is saying something more like plumbing. Mercy is meant to flow through a person, in from the throne room, out into the corridor. And a heart that clamps shut on the outflow will find, mysteriously, that the intake clogs too. A man who truly grasps that 200,000 years were burned off his account does not strangle anyone over 90 days. If he is still strangling, he has not yet felt the size of his own rescue. The unforgiveness is not the crime that cancels the pardon. It is the symptom that the pardon never made it to the bloodstream. Now, before one more sentence, some things must be said plainly, because this petition has been weaponized against wounded people, and Jesus never authorized that. Forgiveness does not mean what happened was small. The 100 denarii were real money. Your ledger has real entries in it. Forgiving is not editing history until the offense looks like a misunderstanding. It happened. It was wrong. And forgiveness begins by saying so. Forgiveness is not automatic trust. The door of the heart and the door of the house are two different doors. You can cancel a debt and still verify. Still keep wise distance. Still let rebuilding take the years it takes. And forgiveness never requires anyone to stay in danger. If the person who hurt you is still hurting you, boundaries are not a failure of grace. You can release a person to God from behind a locked door. And sometimes the locked door is the obedience. Forgiveness is one specific transaction, and only one. It is closing the ledger. It is walking to that interior room where the account is kept, the one you can recite in the dark, and resigning as the collector. The debt was real. Now it is transferred, out of your hands. Up to a king who settles accounts more justly than you ever could and more mercifully than you are currently willing to. Justice does not die when you forgive. It changes departments. The man on the edge of the bed does not call his brother. Let us be honest about him. He is not ready. And this prayer is not a machine where you insert the petition and the reconciliation falls out. But something does happen. And it is small enough to miss and large enough to matter. The phone is in his hand. His brother's name on the screen. And for the first time in years, he does not swipe it away. He looks at it. He lets it be his brother's name instead of Exhibit A. His thumb drifts near the call button. Not on it, near it. And he sits there in the lamplight, doing the hardest math of his life. A man with a ledger in one hand and a prayer in the other. Feeling, maybe for the first time, which one is heavier. The screen times out and goes dark on its own. That is where we leave him tonight. And if you think that is not progress, you have never carried a ledger. Some doors open an inch a decade, and heaven throws a party over the inch. But the prayer cannot end here. Forgiveness deals with the debts behind you. And every person praying also has a battlefield in front of him. There are rooms in tomorrow where you already know you will be weak. There is an hour of the day when your resolve runs thinnest. A screen, a bottle, a temper, a person. And you know the hour. You could name it right now. The 6th petition was written for that hour. And what makes it different from every desperate prayer you have ever prayed in the middle of falling is one word. It is prayed before. Every person watching this has an hour. For one man, it is 11:40 at night. House, asleep. Laptop, open. The cursor sitting in a search bar that has ruined him before. For a woman across town, it is the drive home past a certain parking lot, a certain glowing sign. And the promise she made rides in the passenger seat, getting quieter by the block. For someone else, it is a group chat where a co-worker's name just came up. And the story everyone is enjoying needs only one more detail. The detail she happens to know. For another, it is a spreadsheet at 4 in the afternoon. One cell. One number that could be adjusted. And no auditor on earth would ever find it. For another, it is simply the replay. The nightly screening of an old grievance. The argument rewound and rewatched and fed like a stray cat until it owns the porch. Different hours, different doors. Some architecture. Somewhere in your week there is a place where your particular weakness and its favorite opportunity have a standing appointment. You know the room. You know the time. You could draw a map. Now think about the way we usually pray about that room. We pray from inside it. The hand is already on the doorknob, or past it, and the prayer goes up like a flare from a sinking ship. God, get me out of this. Give me strength, right now. In the middle, it is the emergency call, placed from the scene of the fire. And God hears those calls. And thank God he does. But listen to the prayer Jesus taught. And check the timestamp on it. Lead us not into temptation. That is a request filed in the morning. Before the day's roads are chosen. It does not say, rescue me from the middle of the battle. It says, route me around the battlefield. Do not let today's path run through that room. One prayer is a cry for a lifeguard. The other is a quiet word with the navigator before the ship leaves the harbor. Jesus put the navigator's prayer in the daily prayer, which tells you when he expects the war to be decided. The war is decided at 7 in the morning, with the coffee. when the door is still just a door. But now we have to stop and face the problem in this sentence. Because you have felt it, even if you never said it out loud. Lead us not into temptation. Read plainly. It sounds like we are begging God not to do something terrible, as if the Father might otherwise steer his own child into the trap. Is that the God of this prayer? People have stumbled over this line for 2,000 years. It bothered readers enough that in the year 2017, Pope Francis said publicly that the traditional translation could mislead people, and the bishops of France, and later Italy, actually changed the wording used in their churches to something like, "Do not let us fall into temptation." Whatever you make of that decision, feel what drove it. This line makes people flinch, and the flinch deserves an answer. The answer starts with a flat statement from James. When tempted, no one should say, "God is tempting me." God cannot be tempted by evil, and he tempts no one. Period. So whatever the petition means, it cannot mean, "Please do not entrap me," because entrapment is not in his character. The knot loosens when you learn that the Greek word here, peirasmus, carries two meanings in one skin. It means temptation, the enticement towards sin, but it equally means trial, testing, the pressure that reveals what a thing is made of. The same furnace that the enemy uses, hoping you will burn. God allows hoping you will be proven. Same heat, opposite intention. And the petition, prayed by someone who knows his own record in furnaces, means something like this. Father, you know what I am made of. You know where I crack. When the roads of this day are laid out, do not let mine run through the fire alone. Spare me the test I would fail. And, if the test must come, do not leave me in it by myself. Hear the posture of that. This is the prayer of a man who has finally stopped lying about his strength. It assumes weakness the way a weather report assumes rain. And that assumption, humiliating as it sounds, turns out to be the entire secret. Because the great falls in Scripture almost never begin with desire. They begin with confidence. Watch it happen to the best of them. It is Thursday night again. The same Thursday. The upper room, emptying out toward the olive grove. Jesus tells his disciples that this very night they will all fall away. And Peter, big, loyal, magnificent Peter, steps forward with the sentence that should be engraved over every door where anyone has ever felt certain of themselves. Even if all fall away, I never will. He means it completely. That is what makes it terrifying. He is not lying. He is miscalibrated. He has never met the version of himself that appears in a certain courtyard, under a certain kind of fear, and he has mistaken never having met that man for that man not existing. An hour later, in Gethsemane, Jesus finds Peter sleeping and wakes him with a warning that is almost word for word. The sixth petition, watch and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Jesus is handing him the map, the exact prayer for the exact night. Pray now, Peter, before the courtyard, because the hour is coming and you are weaker than your promises. And Peter, who would have charged a legion for this rabbi, cannot stay awake for him. He sleeps through the navigator's hour, so he gets the fire instead, and a few hours later, warming his hands at a charcoal fire in the high priest's courtyard. A servant girl looks at his face, and the man who said, "I never will," discovers who he is when the test comes unprayed for. 3 denials before the rooster finishes. The tragedy is not that Peter was weak. Everyone in the story is weak. The tragedy is that he was offered the prayer for weak men 1 hour before he needed it. And he was too sure of himself to pray it. So here is what the 6th petition looks like when it comes off the page and into a Tuesday. It is a person. In the morning, with honest paper in front of God, naming the hour. It is 11:40 at night for the laptop, or the drive home, or the 4th glass, or the moment your mother-in-law says the thing she always says. Naming it in advance, out loud, before the Father who knows it anyway, and asking, specifically, concretely, do not let me walk in there alone today. Route me around it. Put a phone call in that hour. Put a person in that hallway. And where the road must pass the door, stand between me and the handle. That prayer, prayed at 7 in the morning, has broken habits that a decade of 1140 flares could not, because it moves the battle to ground where you have never yet lost. The hour before, the hour when the door is still just a door and you are still just a person having coffee with your Father. Yet even this petition is not the end of the prayer, because temptation, at least, negotiates. Temptation needs your yes. There are things in this world that do not need your yes. Things that come for people who never opened any door. The phone call in the night. The cells that multiply in secret. The cruelty of others. The shadow that falls across a life from outside it. Against those things, watchfulness is not enough, because they were never asking your permission. For those things, the prayer saves its final word. And the final word is not a strategy. It is a cry. The dark comes into the house the way it always does, room by room, and the house begins its second life. The lights went out at 10:50. You know this hour too. The one when the day's noise drains away and everything you outran catches up. In the dark, distances collapse. The war that was 7 time zones away at breakfast is in the bedroom now. The diagnosis that belongs to a friend of a friend moves into the hallway. The man from our story lies there beside his sleeping wife. And the portal he checked 3 times today checks on him now. Pending, and the dark does what the dark does, which is math. Whatever you fear, the night multiplies it. For that hour, the prayer keeps its last petition, but deliver us from evil. Before anything else, notice that this line exists. The prayer of Jesus ends by naming evil. It does not say stress. It does not say negativity or challenges. Evil, the most famous prayer on earth, the one taught to children at bedtime, looks straight at the darkest word in the language and says it out loud. Nightly, whatever else this prayer is, it is not naive. It does not tuck you in with the assurance that the world is basically fine. It assumes, every single day, that there is something out there, and sometimes in here, that you need rescuing from. People sometimes accuse faith of being a comfortable illusion. Read the last line of its central prayer. It is one of the least illusioned sentences ever written. What is this evil we are asking to be delivered from? Do not let the word float away into abstraction. It has faces, and you have seen them. There is the evil done to us, the betrayal you did not deserve and did not see coming, the violence in the headlines and, for some watching this, the violence in a memory, the lie that cost you years, There is, harder to say, the evil we are capable of. The night we caught a man editing his apology. We glimpsed it. The ledger keeper, the throat grabber, living in our own chest. Any honest person past 40 has met, at least once, in some moment of rage or appetite or cold calculation, a stranger inside themselves who frightened them. There is the wreckage that outruns repair, the consequences of sins, ours and others, that no amount of effort claws back. The family scattered by a decision made before some of its members were born. And there is the shadow at the end of the hallway. Illness, loss, and finally death itself. The evil that comes for every unlocked and locked door alike. Now, a question the scholars have argued kindly about for centuries, and we can settle it the way the Church largely has, by refusing to choose. The Greek can be read two ways: deliver us from evil, the thing, or deliver us from the evil one, the enemy himself. Both readings are old. Both are faithful. And the argument matters less than it seems, because both readings agree on the only point that changes how you sleep. Whether evil is a force, a person, or both. It is bigger than you. The petition does not ask for better tactics against it. It asks to be delivered. And delivered is a rescue word. The Greek verb, rearrange, is what you say when someone is dragged out of a current that was taking them under, snatched from the tracks, pulled from the wreck. It is the vocabulary of rescue from outside. Nobody rearranges themselves. That is what makes the seventh petition different from the other six. Every other petition leaves you a share of the work. Hallowed be your name, and I will carry it carefully. Your kingdom come, and I will roll down the window at the intersection. Forgive us as we forgive. And I must walk to the ledger room. Lead us not. And I will name my hour in the morning. The seventh has no assignment attached, because it is prayed for the places where assignments run out. It is the petition of the hospital corridor, the police tape, the 3 in the morning phone call, the moments when the strongest person in the family goes quiet, because everyone finally understands that what is needed now is rescue, from outside, from above, from someone stronger than the current. Then look at where Jesus placed this petition, because the placement is quietly one of the most hopeful things in the whole prayer. Evil gets named last. The prayer does not open with the darkness, does not organize itself around the darkness, does not give the darkness the first word of the morning. By the time you arrive at this line, you have already said Father, already hallowed the name, already asked for the kingdom, already surrendered the outcomes, already received today's bread and today's mercy. 7 petitions, and evil is permitted exactly one clause of one of them. At the end, surrounded on the front side by everything true, and in the traditional ending, the generations of Americans have said, evil does not even get the last word there. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory. The prayer mentions the dark, the way a well-run house mentions it, honestly, and then locks the door and speaks of other things. Evil is in the prayer, because it is in the world, but it is bracketed. It does not get the first word, and it will not get the last one. So watch the difference this makes in a dark bedroom, because there are 2 ways to pray at 10:50 at night, and they build 2 different men. One way is fortress praying. You lie there running the perimeter, checking each fear like a lock. The scan, the job, the kids on the highway, the news. Rehearsing disasters so thoroughly that the praying and the worrying become the same activity with an amen on it. Fortress prayer is exhausting because the watchman is you. The whole architecture rests on your vigilance. And vigilance does not sleep well. The other way is the seventh petition. It is shorter. It sounds, honestly, like a child calling out from his room to a father down the hall. Just deliver us. Keep us. You stay up, because I cannot. And then, this is the scandal of it. Actually rolling over. Sleeping. Not because the dangers were disproven. The dangers are real, and the prayer never said otherwise. But because the watch has been transferred to someone who does not doze, the psalmist said it 3,000 years ago. He who keeps you will neither slumber nor sleep. The seventh petition is how you clock out of a shift you were never strong enough to work. The man in our story does not fall asleep quickly. Pending is still pending. But somewhere after the prayer, his breathing changes. And the last thought before sleep takes him is a strange, old, sturdy thought that tonight, over this house, somebody is up. And there the seven petitions end. A name, a kingdom, a will, bread, mercy, guidance, rescue. The prayer has said everything it came to say. But your mouth, if you grew up in America, is not done. Is it? There is one more line rising by reflex. The big brass finish. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. And here is something most people have never been told. That line has a different story than the rest of the prayer. It is not one of the seven petitions, and depending on which Bible sits on your shelf, it may not even be printed in Matthew chapter 6 at all. The story of where that ending came from, and of the one small word that follows it, deserves its own few minutes, because how a prayer ends turns out to matter almost as much as how it begins. Open two Bibles side by side, and you can run the experiment yourself. Take an old King James, the kind with a cracked spine and a family tree penciled inside the cover, and read the Lord's Prayer in Matthew chapter 6. It ends with the full brass section. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Now, take almost any modern translation off the shelf and find the same passage. The prayer ends at deliver us from evil. The big finish is gone, or it has been moved down to a footnote in small print, like a guest quietly reseated at another table. What happened? Did somebody cut a piece of the Bible? The honest answer is gentler and more interesting than that. When the King James translators did their work in the early 1600s, they used the Greek manuscripts available to them, and those manuscripts included the majestic ending. In the centuries since, older copies of Matthew have come to light, copies written closer to the original. And in the oldest and best of them, the line is not there. The earliest text of Matthew, as far as we can tell, ends the prayer at evil. The doxology, which is simply the old word for a burst of praise, came along a little later. But here is the part of the story worth loving. We have a good idea where it came from, and it did not come from a forger or a committee with an agenda. It came from worship. There survives a little handbook of the early church called the Didache, commonly dated to the late 1st or early 2nd century, a kind of instruction manual for brand new Christians. It teaches believers to pray the Lord's Prayer 3 times a day, and when it quotes the prayer, A version of the praise line is already attached, which tells you what happened. The first generations of Christians praying these words together, morning, noon, and night, in house churches and at gravesides and under threat, apparently could not bring themselves to stop on the word evil. Something in them stood up at the end and answered back. So they finished the way you finish a letter to a king. Yours is the kingdom. Yours is the power. Yours is the glory. Forever. It was never one of the 7 petitions. It is not asking for anything. It is the congregation refusing to let darkness have the final syllable. And after 20 centuries, most of the church still refuses. And honestly, who can blame them? Some traditions print it. Some do not. And both are handling the evidence honestly. Nothing in your faith hangs on it. Say it freely. Just know, when you say it, that you are joining an ancient reflex, the oldest comeback in Christian history. And then, at the very end, comes the smallest word in the whole prayer, and possibly the most misunderstood. Amen. We treat it as punctuation, the spiritual period, the click of the call ending, the send button. The word that means you may now open your eyes and pass the potatoes. Children learn it as the signal that the boring part is over. And most adults never revise the definition. The word is Hebrew, and it is old. Older than this prayer by many centuries. And it does not mean the end. It comes from a root that means firm, solid, something you can put weight on. When ancient Israel said Amen, they were not signing off. They were signing on. It means, so be it. Let it stand. That is true. And I am staking myself to it. It is the word a witness says to a testimony. The word a people shouts back at a covenant. It is less like hanging up the phone and more like a handshake at the end of an agreement. The moment the words stop being words and become binding, which changes what happens in the last second of your praying. You have walked 7 petitions. You have handed over a name, a kingdom, a will, a day's needs, a ledger, an hour of weakness, and a night's fears. Amen is where you take your hands off all of it. I have said what I came to say. I have set it down in front of my Father, and I do not have to keep talking, circling back, repeating, topping it off with one more anxious paragraph, as if the silence after the prayer were a gap in the coverage. The silence after Amen is not a gap. It is the sound of something delivered. So the prayer has a doorway, 7 rooms, a shout of praise, the family added, and a handshake at the end, which leaves exactly one question. And it is the question this entire story exists to answer. It is the word sitting in the title. The word that has been waiting patiently through 13 chapters. Tomorrow, you will wake up into an ordinary day. Alarm, coffee, traffic, screens, people, dinner, dark. Where, in all of that, do 50 ancient words actually fit? Walk through it with me, hour by hour, and see. Tomorrow morning, before your feet touch the floor, there will be about 10 seconds that belong to you. The alarm has gone off. The day is standing outside the door with its clipboard, and your hand is already reaching for the phone. Because the modern morning begins with a briefing. What happened overnight? Who needs what? What the world thinks of you. Most of us hand those first 10 seconds to a glowing rectangle, and the rectangle sets the agenda before our eyes are fully open. Here is the first pause. Leave the phone where it is. Feet on the floor. 10 seconds. First petition. Father, before I check what anyone thinks of me today, I care what they think of you. Your name rides with me today. Make it look right. That is the whole exercise. You have just hallowed a name before defending your own. And the day has not even started. Within the hour, you will open the news. And the news will hand you the world's brokenness in a scroll. Engineered to keep your thumb moving and your chest tightening. Right there, mid-scroll, is the second pause. Your kingdom come. Bring it here, into this exact mess. And show me my square foot of it today. Then keep your eyes open on the commute. Because we have already seen how this petition likes to answer. Sometimes it answers at a red light, holding a cardboard sign. Sometime before noon, the day will break formation. It always does. The meeting moves. The school nurse calls. The email lands that rearranges the afternoon. The old reflex is to grab the wheel harder. That is the third pause. And Gethsemane taught you the order. Say the want first. Out loud. Father, I wanted this day to go the other way. Then the turn. But you can see, around corners I cannot. Not what I will. What you will. You are not pretending to be fine. You are declining to be in charge. And those are different things. At lunch, or whenever you first sit down to eat, comes the easiest pause of the 7. And the one hurried Americans skip most. Give us this day our daily bread. Look at the actual food. Rain fell on a field you will never see. A stranger drove it through the night. And it landed here. Today's manna wearing a modern disguise. Thank him for the day's portion. And let the little wordus do its work. Ask him to put someone in your path who is short on bread, and to make you part of the answer. The afternoon will bring you a person. It always brings you a person. Someone whose words land wrong, or someone your words land wrong on. The moment you feel the ledger open, that warm, familiar reach for the pen, there is the fifth pause. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Name your own entry first, without the editing thumbs. Then look at the other name in the ledger, today's small debtor or the decade's large one, and hand in the resignation. I am not the collector anymore. Some days that prayer takes 4 seconds. Some days it takes the whole drive home. Pray it anyway. As evening comes on, you will approach your hour. We named it 2 chapters ago. The room where your weakness and its opportunity keep their standing appointment. The 6th pause happens before you get there. And timing is everything. On the drive home, before the laptop opens, before the phone comes off the charger at 11:40, pray it while the door is still just a door. Lead us not into temptation. Father, you know my hour. It is coming in 90 minutes. Do not let me walk in there alone. This is the navigator's prayer, and it only works from the harbor. And then the lights, your hand on the switch, the house going quiet. The hour when the dark does its math. The 7th pause is the shortest of all, and it should be the child's version called down the hall. Deliver us from evil. Keep us tonight. The ones under this roof and the ones I cannot reach. You stay up. I cannot. Then, the hardest instruction in this entire story, roll over and let the shift change. 7 petitions. 7 pauses. One ordinary day, turned right side up. Look at what just happened to a Tuesday. Nothing was added to it. The same alarm, the same scroll, the same broken plans, the same lunch, the same difficult person, the same dangerous hour, the same dark. The prayer did not change the contents of the day. It changed the order of operations. God's name before your reputation. God's kingdom before your feed. God's will before your grip. And your needs, all 4 of them, honored in their proper place, which is held, never first, and never forgotten. 2 honest warnings before this day ends, because this method can be bent into things Jesus never made. This is not a formula that obligates God. 7 pauses do not purchase 7 outcomes. You are keeping company with a Father, not programming a machine. And this is not a replacement for every other way you pray. The wild, unscripted prayers, the tears with no words, the gratitude that interrupts you on the highway. All of that remains. This prayer is not the ceiling on your conversation with God. It is the floor, the frame Jesus gave to people who had run out of words, which is all of us. Eventually, at some 2:14 in the morning, just try it. One day, tomorrow, since it is already on the calendar. 7 small pauses, none longer than a stoplight, which brings us back, one last time, to our man. His tomorrow is here now. The alarm is about to go off in that bedroom where this whole story started. And the first thing you should know about his new morning is the thing no one selling transformation will ever tell you. Almost nothing has changed. The alarm goes off at 6:15, and for 3 seconds, the man does not remember that anything is different. Then he does what he has done every morning for months. He reaches for the phone. And here is the truth. This story owes you. The truth, the whole video has been walking toward. The phone has nothing new in it. The hospital portal still says pending. He checks. Thumb moving on its own. And the word sits there. Grey and patient. The same word as yesterday. Downstairs. The bill is still on the kitchen table. And the number on it has not lost a single digit overnight. His brother has not called. The news is the news. The war is the war. The prices are the prices. If you came to this story hoping the last chapter would end with the test results coming back clean and the debt erased and the brother standing on the porch with coffee, then this is the moment the story disappoints you. And it disappoints you on purpose. Because that story would be a lie. And you have been sold that story before. And it did not survive contact with your actual life. 50 ancient words did not rearrange his circumstances in one night. Nobody honest ever said they would. But stay in the room. Watch him. Because something is different. And the camera can see it. Even if he cannot yet. He is sitting on the edge of the bed, feet on the floor, and the phone is in his hand, and the portal is open. And then, 10 seconds, he sets the phone face down on the nightstand. He sits there in the grey morning light, an ordinary man in a t-shirt, and his lips move. Barely, just the front door of it. Father, hallowed be your name. Today. In this house. In me. 10 seconds. And then the day is allowed to begin. In the kitchen, the bill is face up. It has been face up since yesterday afternoon. And that small fact is doing quiet work. A bill face down is a monster in a closet. A bill face up is a number, and numbers can be looked at. And he looks at it while the coffee brews. And he says, half out loud, the strangest budget meeting of his life. There is enough for today. You know about the rest. He is not certain the ceiling heard him. He pours the coffee anyway. And he is drinking it slower than he did last week. A man who has stopped bailing water in the order of his panic has, it turns out, a little more time in his morning than he thought. In the car, at the red light, the man with the cardboard sign is standing where he always stands. And our man rolls the window down. Understand what this is and what it is not. It is not the kingdom of God arriving in fullness at a suburban intersection. It is a granola bar from the glove box. A name learned, Ray, and 40 seconds of two men talking about the cold. The light turns green. That is all. That is a mustard seed. And you were warned 10 chapters ago that this is the size the kingdom ships in. At work, the meeting happens, the one he rehearsed for in the shower a lifetime of 2 days ago. Somebody says the unfair thing, the cheap shot, the sentence engineered to make him lawyer up and fire back, and there is a pause. 2 seconds, maybe 3, where the whole room can feel him deciding. He says the true thing, the necessary thing, and he leaves the poison off the tip of it. Nobody applauds. Nobody in that conference room knows that a prayer did that. One reputation took a small dent in there, and one name came out clean, and he walked out having gotten the better trade. And then, at 4:40 in the afternoon, in the parking lot, before he starts the engine, he takes out the phone and scrolls to the name. His thumb does not hover this time. The line rings once, twice, 3 times. Each ring is a year. And he sits there with his heart going like a man on a diving board. And the story ends here, with the phone ringing, because it has to. You will not hear whether the brother picks up. That is not the storyteller being cruel. That is the storyteller being honest about what the 5th petition actually promised. As we forgive was never a guarantee that the other man answers. It was the closing of a ledger and the resignation of a collector. And that part, the only part that was ever his to do, is done. The call is out of his hands now. In the space between 2 phones, in the hands of the God who specializes in the space between brothers. Some doors open on the first ring. Some take 10 years of birthdays. The praying man's job was to dial. So here is the honest arithmetic of his tomorrow. The bill, unchanged. The portal, pending. The brother, unresolved. The world, still the world. And the man, different, not glowing, not fixed, not finished. Different the way a house is different when it has been rewired. The same walls, the same rooms, and current running where there was none. Because look at what he carried through this one ordinary day. A name that was not his. Hallowed at 6:15. A kingdom. 40 seconds of it. At a red light. A will surrendered in a conference room. Bread. Counted and found sufficient at a kitchen table. 2 ledgers. One confessed and one closed. And a phone call ringing into the dusk. An hour of weakness. Prayed about at 4:40 instead of survived at 11:40. And tonight, when the lights go out and the dark starts its math, a short prayer down the hallway of the universe. Keep us. You stay up. I cannot. And then, sleep, actual sleep. The sleep of a man who has clocked out of a shift he was never strong enough to work. 7 petitions. He prayed them all, and never once folded his hands. And some night, weeks from now or years from now, it will happen again. 2:14 in the morning. The ceiling, the weight, it comes back. It always comes back. And no honest teacher ever told you otherwise. The bill will have a different name on it by then. The pending will be a different pending. But the hour will be the same hour. And lying there in the dark, he will reach for the words the way he has since he was 8 years old. Our Father, who art in heaven. And here is the difference, the whole difference. The only transformation this story ever promised. This time he will hear them. Every word will land somewhere. Hallowed be thy name. And he will hand over his reputation in the dark. Thy kingdom come. And he will mean it. Knowing now what it costs. Thy will be done. And Gethsemane will hold his hand while he says it. The bread, the debts, the hour, the rescue, each one finding its own room in him. 7 petitions moving through a human heart in the right order, at last, at 2:14 in the morning, which it turns out is a perfectly good hour for the best prayer ever taught. The words did not change. They have not changed in 20 centuries. He changed. That is how the prayer works. That is the only way it has ever worked. So tomorrow morning, when your feet find the floor, you have 10 seconds, and now you know what they are for. The Lord's Prayer may not change everything you face tomorrow, but if you truly pray it, it will change how you face everything tomorrow brings. 7 petitions. 1. Father, tomorrow is waiting.